The Gravity admin site contains all the settings that IT administrators and Gravity product owners use to manage all aspects of Gravity. This video will familiarize you with the common settings across all pages, and lastly introducing you to some more advanced features for technical administrators. Let's start at the bottom with the About section. It shows some people who provided great ideas toward Gravity, and if you are on that list and see this video, we want to thank you once more for your input. We owe you one. Next up is the bottom list of people who you may want to blame for any bug you discover. But besides all that, you can also check the current version of your Gravity instance. The next section is the changelog, where we provide a brief overview of what has been added or improved in each release. There are no settings here, this information is for your convenience only. The section Third-Party Modules lists all the third-party software modules we have incorporated in Gravity and identifies which license applies to each of these modules. Now that we have these information sections out of the way, let's look at the top section, Users. The user settings are where you can manage your users' accounts and roles. You can add a new user by pressing the Add button. Or you can edit existing users by pressing the Edit button next to their name. Each user has multiple settings that you can change. Their username, for logging into the admin site. Their role, which determines what they can do in Gravity. Their password, which allows them access this site only. If you have enabled 2FA, you can reset the two-factor authentication keys for any user. You need this if a user has changed or lost his second-factor devices. The checkbox Don't Store User Settings will prevent Gravity from remembering what a particular user has seen or done. You can use this option for kiosk users or in demos, where you want to maintain consistency without having to delete and recreate profiles. To manage audiences, click on Audiences in the left navigation bar. In the Audiences section, you can add, modify, and delete audiences. In the General tab, you can define how long a user will be in this group and if he needs moved to another audience. In Translation, you define the translation of your audience's name. By default, it is set to automap so that when you change your audience's name, it changes in all other areas automatically. You can also manually edit this text later if needed. In automapping, you can write regular expressions that will operate on the user login, and based on such rules, the users are moved into the audience. This feature is not required but gives you more flexibility with managing your audiences than just having them linked manually between different areas or applications. The last tab shows all users that are in the audience. Here you can manually remove a user here from an audience. Also, in the Members tab, you can export an Excel file with all your members. You can then import the file again, and Gravity will organize the audience according to your list. With this import wizard, you can also create users up front. Just activate the checkbox Allow creation of new users. When you create an app in the Gravity dashboard, you're defining a container that stores site configuration information. When you search in Dashboard and select In this app, all callouts who are stored in sites who are assigned to this app will be displayed as search result. When you create or edit an app, you'll define its name and its translations. You'll also define what application type will be assigned, and which modules should be active. The application type is important because based on that information Gravity will use to detect the logged-in user information. Let's talk about the biggest configuration part, sites. When you click on Sites, you'll see a list of all the sites defined in your Gravity instance. If you press the Edit button next to one site, you'll see the detailed configuration for that site. You can delete a site by clicking on the trash icon next to it. The circle icon will recalculate all your hotspots for that site once you made changes to any of the 3 tabs that edit mappings. We will talk about it later, once we are looking into detail settings of a site. But keep in mind, once you have made changes in any mappings, you need to press Recalculate for that particular site. At the top of the page is a button where you can recalculate all mappings for all your sites at once. The last button will let you export data from this site. If you select Export, there are 2 options: export just callout data or export both callout data and site configuration. This is handy if you must move that data from a staging environment to production. If you want to import such data, press the Import button. Once pressed, select the file and fine-tune how Gravity should import your data in terms of URL replacements and other settings. If you look at the details of a site, another row of tabs is displayed. In here, the detail settings for a site configuration are made. On the General tab, you can set options that affect how your entire site is configured. In this tab, you can set the name of the configured site and to which application it belongs. You can also set some very technical details in this tab. I won't go into those here, but if you want more information about them, just ask us or see the wiki. In the Lighthouse Visibility Mode section, you define whether the lighthouse should be visible on that site. In Hotspot Placement, you define which algorithms Gravity should use when finding elements and in which order. In Allow Embedded Code, you can forbid embedding code in the callouts for security reasons. In Show Multilingual Context menu, you hide or display the menu for multilingual variations if not used. The tab Content Owners allows you to add and remove users who have permission to edit content on this site. If you don't see the pencil icon in the Gravity control, it means that you have not added yourself as a content owner. In the tab Control Settings, you can control how Gravity appears on your site. You can control the following: the orientation, horizontal or vertical, all color aspects of the control and its icons, the icon when the control is collapsed, the size of the icon from in pixels, whether or not it should be visible at all, whether or not it should be collapsed or expanded by default, whether or not the dashboard should be visible by default, where its position should be, also in pixels. The Color Scheme section of the Gravity admin interface allows you to define colors for the backgrounds, icons, and font size for callouts, hotspots, lighthouses, and the dashboard. In the Grid tab, you can define a grid layer that invisibly lays over your site. This is useful if you want to place callouts only inside a certain area of the site, or if you want to align elements in a particular way. The grid needs to be entered as an HTML table. In Site Mapping, the admin site allows you to configure which URL should be Gravity activated. You can set up different sites and add more than one URL to the configuration. This way, all callouts that you add to one site will appear on all other configured sites as well. You can also use this section to exclude certain URLs from being included in your callout configuration. When Gravity users create a callout, they need to define the rules for how Gravity will save URLs. In Hotspot Mapping and Navigation Mapping, you define rules that tell Gravity how to save URLs once they're created. We make use of regular expressions in order to manipulate URLs, and we define which parts of the URL should be variable and which parts should be static. The tab Navigation Mapping is used for defining dynamic elements in workflow steps. These guidelines tell Gravity how to calculate which URL should be used for each step in the workflow. The tab Aliases is used to define word aliases. Let's say you have a callout on a Save button in one area of your application, but in another area, it's called Store. If you want the same callout appear on both elements, then create an alias. The main navigation, Hotspots, shows a list of all callouts and workflow in the system. You can search and filter for it, but some functions for each callout are also available here. Reset hotspot position. If you have lost a hotspot, you can use this function to reset its position to the default one. Set a callout to be visible only in the lighthouse. Delete all language variations. Sometimes you might want to start over with a new version of something that's already been translated. This allows you to do so quickly and easily. And for your convenience, you can delete callouts from here. That is sometimes easier than navigate to the site itself. In the main navigation, security, Gravity admins can set the number of hours that a user remains authenticated with the service. After this time has passed, Gravity will check again to make sure the user is properly authenticated. Under Security Level, you can decide how the user is authenticated. Level 0 means they're automatically authenticated based on the credentials that are being sent from an application. Level 1 and 2 are different levels of manually authentication with username and password. In addition to this, Gravity allows users to exclude or include certain mail domains for accessing Gravity. This is helpful if you are using Gravity in a corporation with sub-companies which should not see your callouts. In Languages, you can define the default language for your Gravity instance and choose other languages that should be available for the callouts content. Under the Action section, you can switch the default language by pressing the star icon or delete languages you don't need anymore. The Server Logs section is mainly used by the Gravity support team to review server error and status information. In the Audit Log section, you can see every manipulation on Gravity content and site configuration. So, you as a Gravity admin can review which user has done what on Gravity administration or which user has updated a callouts content. In Settings, you define some basic Gravity preferences. Under the tab Email, you define a mail server in your company. Once defined, Gravity can send you and the authors emails about callouts that can't be assigned anymore. Under the Info tab, you can define a help link and logo for users who have to log in manually. This is dependent on the security settings in Gravity. If Gravity sends out warning emails about not assigned callouts, define how often it should send such emails in the tab Notification. You can specify other recipients in the Support tab. In Gravity Control Description, define an onboarding message to users who will see the Gravity control in their app for the first time. That message over the Gravity control is only showed once and only for users who are automatically added to the system. In other words, only if you use level 0 in the security settings. In Workflow settings, you can specify the number of minutes that should elapse after a user starts but does not complete a workflow before it is reset to unread. The Admin Site tab lets you choose whether or not to configure the browser extension on your administrative site. This setting is used by customers using on-site installations. Also, the session timeout for the admin site can be defined here. And the small checkbox at the end lets you enable two-factor authentication for the admin site. In the Antivirus tab, you can set up a ClamAV instance to scan files uploaded by your users. You can use a different one from us or use our SaaS version. In the Statistic section, you currently have one button, Recalculate. Gravity recalculates the statistic information every 24 hours. If you want to make Gravity immediately recalculate statistic information, click the single button. In this video, we've touched on most of the configuration possibilities of Gravity, but if you'd like to know more about any aspect of the software, please don't hesitate to contact us. Thanks for watching.